YouTube, what's up? Welcome back to Jeezy Fades. Today we are doing Jack from the Titanic. Leonardo DiCaprio himself is in the chair right now and he says, "Make me look how I looked in the Titanic." And so that's what we're going to do, but we're going to refine it a little bit. We're going to give him a little bit of a skin taper in the back. And so getting right into this, we are going to go ahead and section the top out. We're starting at the top of the head and going all the way to his front corner and then creating a parting on the sides. First you wet down the hair and then we're going to go ahead and create our first guideline for the sides. I'm going to comb, make sure I'm as precise as possible. I use my comb to measure out my length. His guideline for his sides is going to be 2 inches around his parietal ridge, where his head starts to round out a little bit more. And so we are just going to follow the parietal ridge and drop down that guideline a little bit more in the crown. He has a lot of hair, and so in certain areas I'm taking multiple sections just to ensure that I create the best foundation that I can for the little bit of flow we got going on here. Next we're going to go ahead and start in the back and go right above the occipital bone and leave a little bit more length in that crown area just to support a little bit more length on top and also give him really nice shape. What's important to do is remember that in longer hairstyles, especially when your client has like a colic in the back, more length is going to support better shape in your haircuts, because if you cut it too short in the back, then it'll start to stick up and look really unnatural, and we do not want that at all. So on the other side, just to make sure I have the most symmetry possible, I am combing out my section at the front first. I measure it with my comb and then I will go ahead and create my first guideline. As you can see, it's not laying the best, and so I resaturate it just to make sure my shears are getting through it. And to be honest, I really should have saturated his hair in the beginning a lot more than I did. That would have made this parting so much more simple, but I was honestly running out of water in my spray bottle, and so I did it as quickly as I could and just got straight into it. As you can see on the back there, I'm keeping the guideline a little bit more narrow. I'm not projecting the hair out quite as far on the sides as I do on the back, and that gives me a little bit more roundness towards the back of the head. Now in this area, it's actually very important for you to actually create a very precise line. It's definitely going to create some weight. It's definitely going to create some disconnection at first. That's going to look a little bit weird, but you actually want that, because at the end of this haircut, once we create a guideline above the ear and connect the top guideline on the side with the bottom guideline, it's going to look so much more precise because of how consistent your guide was throughout your horizontal sections. Our next step right here is going to be taking sections right above the ear, and we are going to bring our fingers flush to the head and essentially create another guideline that's 3/4 to an inch, depending on how thick your fingers are. We're just taking this to finger length, and so we are taking it just to my client's occipital bone, and we are not going down with our guideline at all. We are taking this in a straight line that kind of follows the same line initial guideline has. So when we finish this guideline off, we can just go ahead and project the hair that sticks out in between this bottom guideline and the top guideline and connect the two. When I started my haircutting journey, I actually started in cosmetology school, and so shear cutting was a big part of what I did, and I still think it should be a big part of any barber's skill set. If we are indeed going to be professionals at haircutting, we need to be able to set down the clipper and really give a nice natural looking longer length cut to our clients. And we should be able to cut with precision with shears as well. This is what barbers started with, and so I think it should be something that we are very intentionally good at being skilled at. Because normally, if someone wanted to get this haircut done, they would probably go to a salon. Not a lot of people would trust a barber with this type of haircut. And here is the blending portion of our shear work. So we are taking diagonal partings and we are projecting the hair until the top guideline and the bottom guideline start to fall out, and we are going to go ahead and just match the length in between that bottom guideline, our short guideline, and the guideline that we set on the top there. And once we start to establish this, we should start to get a little bit more flow going on the sides. I definitely recommend taking super small partings starting off, just to ensure as much precision as you can and the most consistent blend with your shears all around. Diagonal partings, projecting it out until the bottom length kind of falls out a little bit, and then any overhanging hair that doesn't connect, we will go ahead and remove with our shears. I like to use diagonal sections for blending out weight because horizontal sections always create weight and vertical sections always remove length, and you can remove both length and weight when you use a combination of the two in diagonal sections. Our next step is to go ahead and finish out our shear work by blending the top in with the sides and layering the top. We're not going to do a fully blended look. My client has wavier hair, and during the consultation he actually told me that his hair, since it is so wavy, definitely shrinks up quite a bit when it dries out. And so I want to be mindful of that and actually leave it a little bit longer so that I see a little bit of overhang, especially in the front. He does want to have a little bit of the curtain bang look going on, and we are going to leave a lot more length in the front. What I'm using here is called over direction. I am taking my length that I've established on the sides and just over directing the hair in the front all the way to the length in the back. And that way, when I brush the hair back, I start to see a little bit of softness, a little bit of layering, but there's a lot of length preserved at the front. And once I do that, I want to round his layers out and create a little bit more softness and not too much of a harsh line on the sides. I want to remove some heaviness from the curtain bangs on the side. And so what I'll do is I will project the hair to 90 degrees following the roundness of his head at the top. and then I will take off any overhanging length that I see that is any longer than the original profile section that I took. Now once I've done that, I can go ahead and find my longest length and see my shortest length there, and I will go ahead and start to connect the two. He said he wanted about 2 inches or so off of his curtain bang, and so we are going to follow that line. We are just going to angle our fingers outward so that he has more length as we get towards the front, and he has a little bit more of a blended look on the back. And so starting at the shortest length on the top, angling our fingers out and connecting those two pieces. Now once we've done that, I still see a little bit of squareness going on here, and so I'm going to point cut because I want this to flow really nicely. And then what I'm going to do is just very lightly slide cut the overhanging pieces on the top so that I start to see some nice flow going on, and I start to see a little bit less of a disconnect in between the length on the sides and the overhanging length on the top. I will go ahead and start to comb back the other side and angle the hair backwards, because that's going to give the slide cutting here an even softer effect, and it's going to remove any squareness, any bluntness from the overhang on top. The final portion of this haircut is just going to be a skin taper on the back there, and we are going to taper in his sideburns to about 1/4 inch. And so our next step is just to make sure that the hair is nice and dry and the hair on top lays back and starts to flow a little bit, and that way I make it so that I don't have to section it up when I'm doing his taper on the sides. I can just lift it up with my comb slightly if it starts to overhang too much. Now, one thing that is important if you are blow drying your client's hair frequently is to just use a little bit of heat protectant or leave-in conditioner, and that way your client doesn't experience any heat damage or split ends due to you using a lot of thermal styling tools. Now we are finally getting into our clipper work, and so starting out, I am just taking a foreguard and I'm taking it up to right where I stopped with my scissor cutting. Remember, I used that guideline to establish my shortest length. I stopped at finger length, and so flicking out with the number 4 guard is going to create a nice little transition into that. And I will debulk with that point, remove all the excess hair that I didn't cut with my shears before. And the sectioning that I used with my shears is actually very intentional because it creates a guideline so I know exactly where I need to stop with my debulking when I start my clipper work. And that just saves time and is super efficient, because I don't have to waste a lot of my time clearing out that area with my shears. And same thing with the sideburn area too. I left them super long so that I can just go ahead and take my number 4 guard and just taper that in right away. So it saves a ton of time, super efficient. If there's any portion ever a portion of the haircut that you are going to clipper cut towards the end of your haircut. When you're starting out with shears, you can just go ahead and leave that long, and that way you don't have to waste any time needlessly going over an area you're going to shear cut later on. My next step is to create my first guideline with my trimmers. I will take my trimmers and create a straight line at the base of the neckline, and this taper is going to be pretty low, pretty natural looking. He has really light hair, and so I am making this as low as I possibly can, just so that he preserves as much flow on the top as he can, and that way he has the best shape in the back there. I'm just fading down now. I'm using my number 3 guard open, and I'm blending down from that 4 guard and just really taking my time with it. I'm not digging in with my clipper at all, just flicking out very gently and not creating any lines. If there's any weight above that point, I can just go ahead and use shear of a comb to take that out later. After that, I go in with my lever open, create about a 1/2 inch guideline, and then I close my lever and flick up just 1 notch, lever half open, and then I will do it 3/4 of the way open and just blend it all out from there. His hair fades super easy because he has really light blonde hair, and so really the only thing I want to be careful of is not digging in with my guards too much, because I want to preserve the nice round shape that I have at the back there. My next step is to take my 1 guard, I will open it up all the way, and I'll just flick up into that 2 area. And once I've created that guideline, I can go ahead and put on my next guard, which is the 1.5. I'll open it all the way and just blend all the way into my 2 there. And I'm very mindful of the head shape here, and I realize that there's going to be a little bit more thickness, a little bit more density towards the corners of his neckline just because of his head shape. And so I'm spending a little bit of extra time in that area. And there's also a little bit of an indent naturally in everyone's head that you can see towards the center of their neckline, and the hair grows very thickly there. And so I want to make sure that I create very consistent gradients all around, and I don't leave it too dark towards any portion of the fade. Using very gentle flicking motions, I'm just working my way through this, taking my time, not creating any harsh lines, just using a very gentle flick motion. My next step is to take my half guard, and I will open it halfway and just take it halfway up that zone that I originally created with my 1 guard open, and I will just start to blend that out using my corners and using a flicky motion there. As I go up the head, I start to flick out a little bit more with my lever, and I start to open my lever a little bit more. Now I'm going to start on the taper on the side of the head, and so I'm using my 3 guard open at first, just to blend down from that 4 that I originally used. Very slow motions with my clippers. I just start at the bottom, the sidebit area, I hold it flush to the head, and then I just go out very gradually. My last portion is going to be detailing out this area of the fade with my shears. I think that anytime you precision cut and you have to blend into it with clippers, you're going to need to use your shears just to create a little bit more of that soft graduation in between anything that's super close, like a neck taper, and a little bit more bulk that you created with your shear work. My last step is just going to be to lighten up some areas here using my texturizing shears, and this is going to help me remove any unnecessary weight or darkness so I can do my edge up. I'll comb the hair as naturally as I can, making sure that it's laying down nicely, and I want to make sure that I don't ignore any long hairs that might get adjusted and mess up his line here. And so combing this area very consistently is going to be important to ensuring that you have a smooth finish on your line. As you can see on the area above the ear, I do go in the same direction as the hair growth, so that way any hair that overhangs a little bit is going to be cut off. He's going to have a nice natural line, and I do the same thing at his arches. I go very gently with my trimmers in the same direction as the hair growth, because I don't want to comb everything down and then create my line and then suddenly make it so that he has a light spot when he combs everything back. I want to make sure that he has very consistent fullness throughout, and so I'll do the same thing above the ear here. I'll hold it down and I will go in the same direction as the hair growth, and that's going to help me prevent creating any light spots with my lineup. My last portion is going to be sea salt spray. I finished the haircut by just using a little bit of Slick Gorilla's sea salt spray, and then to enhance his waves, I will go ahead and use my diffuser. I use it on low heat and low speed, and what I want to do is start at the bottom and then start to move my diffuser upward to kind of scrunch his hair up a little bit more. I will apply heat for a little bit, and then I will use my cold shot just to freeze it in place a little bit more, and then scrunch it together with my fingers in the direction that I want it to flow. And I'm being very, very gentle with this styling process because I want to create the most natural look possible. And so to do that, I can't make the hair do anything that it really doesn't want to do. I can only kind of direct it and start to get it flowing in a direction that I want to lay in. But at the end of the day, I have to understand that his natural texture is his natural texture, and so I have to work in styling his hair and make sure that I complement his natural texture instead of trying to go against it and create a style that he won't be able to naturally achieve. As you can see here, your boy is looking right. He is looking a lot better than what he did walking in here. I'm just going to finish out detailing with my shears. Any hair that's out of place and is not laying how I want it to, I will just go ahead and pull the strand of hair that's kind of sticking out and get rid of it so that it can start to flow together and the waves start to look a little bit more natural, and they all start to fall in place. And as you can see, he was happy with it. I was super stoked. I was a little bit nervous, honestly, because this was quite a transformation for him. I wasn't sure if he'd like it, but he said he had faith in me. Here's the before, looking like Kurt Cobain, and here is the after. Nice flow. My boy's looking like Jack from the Titanic. If you guys thought this was helpful, let me know in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe. Peace.